What's going on, guys? Today we're gonna go over some tips on how you can improve your technique in the single leg deadlift. I love single leg deadlifts because it's a really joint friendly alternative to some of the traditional barbell deadlift variations you might see in the gym. It's also pretty user friendly for most people. It looks intimidating because you're balancing on one leg, but a few of these quick tips, implementing them into your routine, you'll find that you kind of gain a lot of confidence in the movement and you should be good. So let's go over a few kind of classic mistakes first that most people make. Then I'm going to show you two key kind of coaching cues you can implement into the deadlift to help you feel those target areas that you want to feel. Let's get to it. So the first common mistake that people make when they're doing a single leg deadlift is there's no real unison in it. So a lot of people will end up standing up with the weight and they reach back with their leg first and then they try to do the movement in their upper body and it just throws them off balance. There's no kind of unison or tension in the movement. So I want you to pretend that your shoulder, your hip, and your knee, they all stay in the straight line together the entire time, so they all move together. So when I reach back, I'm thinking I'm not just leading with my leg and then dropping my chest down. I'm thinking I'm bringing them down together at the same time. So my shoulder, my hip, and my knee are always in that straight sort of connected line there. It's gonna give you a lot more balance and stability throughout the movement. So the second most common mistake with a single leg deadlift is reaching forward excessively with the weight. So you'll see a lot of people do this. When they go down, they reach forward and they try to come back up like that. Puts them off balance. It also puts a lot of unwanted pressure or strain on the lower back. You wanna think anytime a weight is further away from the body, more onus is on the lower back. I wanna keep the weight nice and close so I could use my hamstrings and my glutes and a lot of those lower body muscles to bring the weight up. So rather than reaching forward past the foot, I like to think that I'm reaching the kettlebell or the dumbbell, whatever you're using, to the inside of my ankle, keeping it nice and close, just like that. I'm pretending that there's a wall right in front of me and I don't want that kettlebell to hit the wall as I do the deadlift. Third mistake you'll see is when people go down to do the deadlift, they'll look up and crank their neck and then come back up. You gotta think like your neck is part of your spine, so you wanna think that you're trying to keep it in as much of alignment as you can while you're doing the deadlift. So rather than looking up and cranking the neck up, I want you to think pulling the chin back, trying to make a double chin, picking a spot on the floor right in front of you and just staring at it while you do that. And you'll notice that when I do that, the top of my head down to my tailbone is one straight line rather than cranking and put a lot of unwanted pressure on the neck while you're doing the deadlift. So another common mistake for the single leg deadlift is allowing that back hip to rotate excessively. So when you're going down and you're doing it, you'll see a lot of folks when they go up, their back foot kind of shifts out and angles out like that, and they start rotating that back hip excessively. So I want you to think that foot that is up in the air while you're doing this, just think you're pulling the toe back to the shin, and when you get down to that bottom position, that toe should be facing down to the floor with the heel straight up to the ceiling. It's not rotated out like a hip airplane. We're thinking having it straight down to the floor, just like that. It's gonna keep the hips nice and straight so you're able to focus on the muscles you wanna focus on, the hamstrings. And the last most common mistake that people will make with this single leg deadlift is like excessively rounding the upper back. Actually, there's two common mistakes here. One is keeping the leg locked, and two is rounding the upper back. So I want you to think always when you're doing a deadlift, slight bend in that knee so you can feel the muscles. You don't want to keep it completely straight and put too much pressure. You'll find that when you do that, there's a lot of unwanted pressure on the kneecap there. So always keep a slight bend, but also don't let that upper back round excessively. I want you to think you got an orange underneath your armpit. You're trying to squeeze it and make orange juice as you do that. Crush that armpit tight as you do this motion. So I'm here, I'm keeping my lat nice and tight. I got good control. I'm not letting it round forward excessively. Now that we've covered most of the common mistakes with a single leg deadlift, I'm gonna give you two really good coaching cues you can use to feel your muscles working more effectively. First coaching cue is to try to make a footprint on the wall behind you. So think in here, that leg that's going up, I'm pulling this toe back up to the shin, keeping it flexed. That flexion is gonna give me more stability and balance in the movement. And I'm thinking I'm just reaching out to the side to counterbalance with my free arm. And from here, I'm just gonna hinge forward, trying to reach and touch the wall behind me with that back leg. And I'm trying to make a perfect footprint on that wall. It's gonna keep trying to make a footprint, it's gonna keep that back foot flexed, so I'm not pointing it like a ballerina. It's gonna keep that tension in that back leg, and tension equals stability, so it's gonna allow me to balance more effectively during the movement. Second coaching cue that's gonna do wonders to help you feel your hamstrings and glutes more effectively is to pretend that you're pulling the floor backwards with your foot that you're balancing on. Reason being is because when we go down and I'm here, if I pretend that I'm pulling the floor that way behind me as I come up, it's gonna allow me to feel my hamstrings and glutes more effectively. Your hamstrings and your glutes are hip extensors. That means that they make your hips go this way. So in order to feel them better, I want you to think when you're at the bottom there, I'm not just pushing the floor and using my quads too much. I want you to think dragging the floor backwards with that stabilizing foot to really recruit the posterior chain in the lower body, or more specifically the hamstrings and the glutes. Give this a shot. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys.